Every single seat in the country has now been formally declared this evening, but one SA state electorate will be heading to the polls for the third time this year. We'll explain why and speak to some of the candidates running. I'm Roman McKinnon. This is SpinCheck. Good evening and welcome. Just over a month since the Australian federal election, the Australian Electoral Commission has formally declared every single 151 seats in the country. This is what the new parliament will look like. Labor has 77 seats, the Liberals have 27, the LNP 21, and the Nationals have 10. That's a total of 58 for the coalition. The Greens have 4, Katter's Australia Party have 1, Centre Alliance also has 1, and there are 10 independents. In the Senate, the Liberals have 23, the LNP has 5, the Nationals have 3, and the Country Liberals have 1, a total of 32 for the coalition. Labor has 26, the Greens have 12, Jackie Lambie Network has 2, One Nation also with 2, the United Australia Party has 1, and the David Pocock Party, has 1. It means that to pass legislation, the government needs the support of the Greens and one crossbencher, likely David Pocock, or alternatively, the support of the coalition. It's now been revealed that newly elected MPs will come to Canberra next week to discuss their new roles before the 47th Parliament opens. But while the federal election is done and dusted, a by-election in the South Australian seat of Bragg is tonight rapidly approaching. Former Liberal Deputy Premier Vicky Chapman won the seat in March, at the March state election, even with a swing of over 8% against her. She resigned just weeks later. On Sunday, we spoke to Liberal Democrats candidate James Hull and Family First candidate Daryl McCann. Earlier tonight, our chief anchor Leo Puglisi caught up with the Greens candidate Jim Bastiras. Take a look.
From my conversations with people on the ground, I think the general opinion is that people aren't happy about those circumstances. People usually do like the politicians that put themselves up to be nominated to actually fulfill their promise, at least for the term that they promised. So there is some degree of resentment on the ground because of that.
Obviously, this has come just a couple of weeks after a federal election, fresh in the mind of many people. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on what's happened federally with the Greens. Pretty extraordinary success. You've gone from 9 senators and 1 MP to 4 MPs and 12 senators. That's 16 total. Labor needs Green support to potentially pass things in the Senate, along with obviously at least one crossbencher. What do you make of that success for the Greens?
It is extraordinary, but I think times are changing. I think the factor is not only a green factor. The green factor was extremely successful and fantastic for us, but there was also, of course, the rise of the teal independents. And I think the combination of those two things points to an explanation that's a little bit beyond just, for example, the usual kind of rhetoric you might hear from the Labor Party, for example, that seems to take a very anti-Murdoch line when they say they blame Rupert Murdoch and his papers for their demise. But I don't think that explains why the Teals did so well. And so I think there's a complex combination here of factors where local candidates are being preferred, and the candidates that are being preferred are the ones that are offering something different to the norm. So an emphasis on solving this issue, positive emphasis on solving the issue of climate change, and just not arguing for targets that are too low and too slow.
Do you think this might be a permanent shift away from the major parties instead of just a one-off?
I believe it is, and I think we're seeing this borne out internationally as well. I think that's what happened in Germany. And I think that is very recently, we just noticed it last night, it's happening in France as well. We're seeing a fragmentation of the vote from traditional parties worldwide because people are seeing that there are benefits to having a competition of opinions in the parliament. And I think that's actually a good thing for our democracy.
Now, just returning to Bragg, as I mentioned before, only a few weeks ago, a by-election on July 2. How are you feeling in terms of your chances? Are you feeling confident?
Yeah, we're feeling very good. I mean, our door knocking is going extremely well. There's a very common theme that people feel it's time for change. So the issue here is which candidate is going to genuinely offer the change. Now, of course, I think I'm that candidate, but we have several good candidates this time. And I think the people of Bragg finally actually have a decent choice. I think that's a good thing for them because they're yearning not to be taken for granted. It's a very common theme that I've encountered.
Well, if people want change now, I mean, as we speak right now, it's June. The election, the state election was March. Why wouldn't they have wanted change in March, only a couple of months ago?
That's a great question. I believe a lot of it is the strong personal vote of Vicky Chapman, who was the Attorney General, and she was in that seat for 20 years. She has a strong connection in the community, and she had that combination where she was socially very progressive. And so she had fit the bill in Bragg for a long time. But I think now there really is a mood for change. And considering the offer the Liberal Party have put up at the moment, a youngster who calls himself Fresh, but I really think it is a scenario of the boy who cried wolf. He's claiming that he's the one who's going to do the change. He's claiming that he's the one that's going to argue for a new primary school, for example, even though they were in power for a couple of decades and they didn't deliver.
And we've got more on the Bragg by-election right now. Head to our website, SIXNewsAU.com. Now for a look at what's trending tonight and where we look at some Ozpol stories you may have missed. The New South Wales and Queensland state budgets have both been handed down. New South Wales' forecast budget deficit has more than tripled to $11.3 billion, with Treasurer Matt Keane describing it as a once-in-a-generation reform budget. In Canberra, the Greens have faced both strong condemnation and praise after the Australian national flag was moved to the side just before Adam Bandt held a press conference. The Greens leader argued the symbol is hurtful to First Nations people, but not everyone approves, with Nine reporting that Labor MP and Minister for Government Services Bill Shorten labelled the move as creating division. And results are tonight still being finalised following the Callide by-election in Queensland over the weekend, with the LNP easily retaining the seat. Most notably, One Nation got around 14% of the vote, leading some to say that Pauline Hanson's party isn't going away anytime soon. And that is SpinCheck for this evening. You can stay up to date by heading to our website, SIXNewsAU.com 24/7. I'm Roman McKinnon. Have a wonderful night.